Welcome to this crucial deep dive for you, our VisaVerge.com listeners. Today, we're dissecting a legal argument that's developing right now, and it could have some pretty significant implications for, well, millions of green card holders in the U.S.
That's right. We're talking about recent arguments happening in the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. It really centers on the power of the Attorney General, specifically regarding permanent resident status. Yours, potentially.
Okay, so what exactly is the government arguing? What's the core claim?
Well, the Department of Justice's position is that the Attorney General possesses really broad authority to revoke green cards. And crucially, they're suggesting this power isn't limited by time. It could happen at any point, maybe even retroactively.
Retroactively, without a time limit.
Exactly. The basis for this argument, they say, is that Congress gave the executive branch very wide latitude in immigration matters.
Wow. Okay, let's unpack that a bit. So, are you saying someone who's, been a lawful permanent resident for decades could suddenly face revocation, even without, say, a serious crime conviction?
That's precisely the potential implication, and it's a major shift. And it's exactly what got the attention of the judges hearing the case, Judges Freeman and Krauss.
Right, I saw they pushed back somewhat.
They definitely expressed some serious skepticism. They called it an extraordinary position for the government to take. They questioned the lack of limits, asking if there should be some kind of principal limit. Could someone's status really be reviewed going back 50 years? It raises huge questions.
Because the way it's always worked, or the way we understood it worked, is that only an immigration judge could revoke a green card, right? After the government actually proves its case.
Exactly. That's the established process. It involves specific legal grounds, things like fraud in the application or certain criminal convictions. And you get your day in court, essentially. Due process.
Due process, yeah. That's the key phrase.
It is. And the worry among legal experts is that this DOJ argument seems to want to bypass that established system, circumventing the immigration judge, potentially weakening those due process protections that lawful permanent residents count on under the Immigration and Nationality Act.
So let's talk about the impact. For the, 12 million green card holders living here, what does this uncertainty mean for you listening?
Well, the practical consequences could be pretty far-reaching if the courts agree with the DOJ. You could see people facing scrutiny over things that happened years, even decades ago. It creates this legal instability.
Sort of constant looking over your shoulder?
Kind of, yeah. And it might also limit how effective an appeal could be if the Attorney General's power is seen as almost absolute in this area.
And beyond the pure legal side, what about just the human cost, the anxiety this must cause for families who've built lives here?
That's absolutely critical. Imagine living with the possibility that your status, which you thought was permanent, could be revisited at any time. It could create widespread fear, make people hesitant to, apply for certain jobs, travel abroad, maybe even invest in a home, just general instability.
We also know many in the VisaVerge.com community are refugees or asylees. There's already that processing pause happening since March. How does this add to their situation?
Yeah, it could definitely compound the difficulties if you layer this uncertainty about green card revocation on top of existing backlogs and processing freezes. It just creates another level of limbo, potentially, for people who came here seeking safety and permanence.
So historically, you needed specific reasons, like fraud or a crime and a hearing. This feels like a move away from that tradition.
It does seem that way. The traditional method required the government to meet a certain burden of proof before an impartial judge. We have seen let's say, more aggressive approaches to immigration enforcement in recent administrations, and this argument might fit into that broader pattern.
Okay, so looking down the road, what happens next? What should people be bracing for?
There are a few possible paths. The Third Circuit could actually agree with the DOJ, granting this very broad authority. That's one possibility.
Or they could reject it.
Or they could reject the argument, basically preserving the current understanding of due process and the role of immigration judges.
Any chance Congress steps in?
It's possible Congress could act to clarify the law, but honestly, nothing seems to be actively pending right now. And regardless of the court's decision, you can probably expect continued legal challenges from immigrant rights groups.
So the bottom line for now is uncertainty. A lot of it for green card holders.
Definitely. Significant uncertainty.
So what's the most important takeaway for our listeners today? What should you be doing?
Number one is stay informed. Keep an eye on what happens in the Third Circuit Appeals Court and look out for any official government announcements on this. And this is really crucial: if you receive any notice, any communication at all about your immigration status that worries you, get qualified legal advice immediately. Don't wait.
Absolutely critical advice. Okay, before we wrap up, a final thought, something for our listeners to maybe chew on.
I think this whole situation forces us to ask, what does permanent really mean in lawful permanent resident? If the executive branch can potentially wield this kind of sweeping, retroactive power over the status of millions, what does that say about the stability and security we associate with legal residency in the U.S.? A fundamental question about security and the rule of law.